It shall be an extremely short press conference. I'll focus only on issues related to the elections, and I'll make a short statement, and then I'll take questions. So, Election Day, as you're all aware, was done in a manner that makes our entire country very proud. Guyanese across the 10 regions of Guyana have been able to openly, freely cast their votes in a peaceful manner, and every international observer group that has witnessed the polls in Guyana have concluded that the elections were peaceful and free and fair. The process, they concluded, was a transparent one. Although cumbersome in the count, but they recognize that that was because of the thoroughness of the process. The count was done openly and observed by the international and local observers, and it was done in the presence of the political agents from all the political parties, the polling agents. The statements of poll were all concluded and signed onto by the presiding officers and the polling agents for all the political parties. Those statements were immediately uploaded to GCOM's website and available to all Guyanese, unlike in the past. This was done all in a matter of hours. The process then continued. Using those statements of poll that were uploaded, the ROs and other GCOM officials, in the presence of all the political parties, tabulated the votes. They declared the results, and these declared results were signed onto by the parties' agents. Those results for all 10 regions are now in the public domain for all Guyanese to see. And we're just, maybe 2 days away from the conclusion of the elections. We didn't have to wait months and months and months to see those. So right now, everyone in Guyana has the declared results by the ROs, which are the official results by these ROs for all 10 regions. The tabulation of those results shows that the PPP Civic won a landslide in the 2025 elections. In 2020, the People's Progressive Party got 50.7% of the votes. The combined opposition got 49.3% of the votes. The difference was less than 1 percentage point. It was 0.3 of a percentage of a percent difference. Just 0.3. In these elections, the PPP, based on the results on the GCOMS page, got 55.32% of the votes. The combined opposition, 44.68% of the votes, a difference of 10.6% from considering in 2020 0.3%. And now in these elections, a difference between the PPP and the combined opposition of 10.6%. This is a landslide by any standard. A landslide, because that's how you look at it. The margin between the winning party and their others and their combined vote. And so this result is not closed by any standard in the world, and especially considering 2020. In 2020, the difference between the combined opposition and the PPP's vote, if we look at numbers now, not percentage, was 6,390 votes. We got 6,390 votes more than the combined opposition. That is APNU and all the other parties at that time. In these elections, we got 46,513 votes more than the combined opposition. APNU, WIN, and all the three other parties together. 46,513 votes more than them combined. That's a landslide. That's a landslide. I'm going to come back to the results in a moment. I just wanted the country to understand this. So today, I wish to thank the supporters of the People's Progressive Party, Civic, who have come out in large numbers and supported our party. And the results that we have, these incredible results, are due to your support and your work. I want to particularly thank the grassroots workers of the party, the tens of thousands of workers who, without pay, carried the message of our party to the most remote corners of this country, to every community, to every group of persons, a positive message of a united Guyana, a prosperous Guyana, a party working for all of its people. They braved every condition. They work in friendly neighborhoods and neighborhoods that were not so friendly, but they were not deterred by any obstacle in their path. They carried that message. You saw them in the red t-shirts across Guyana going everywhere. And I want to, as General Secretary of the party, on behalf of the entire leadership of our party, thank those workers, the grassroots workers of this party. They made the difference in these elections. I want to thank the leaders of our party at every level who were in the field day and night, encouraging people, walking with them, setting up all of the arrangements that are so vital for a party to succeed in an elections. I want to also thank those responsible for logistics before the elections, during the elections, and after the elections. Because too often in a country, those people go unnoticed. So outside of the activists who were visibly seen on the streets carrying out the messages, coming to the rallies, the people who came to the rallies, there was an army of people who were working behind the scenes to bring people out to vote on election day, to cook the food to take to the polling agents. Many of them volunteered their vehicles to pick up people all day long. They were there as polling agents of the party. They stayed throughout the whole day. They stayed through the count. They followed the boxes. They ensured that the boxes were escorted safely to different places in the country where they should be. And today I want to also thank them for the work that they did to ensure this massive victory. On behalf of President Ali particularly, I wish to, outside of the People's Progressive Party, but on his behalf personally, I wish to thank all of them. The GCOM conducted these elections with a great deal of efficiency. There were lots of rumors before the elections about GCOM's capability. Every international observer group spoke of the manner in which the elections were conducted, the quality of the staff, the helpfulness of the staff, the professionalism of the GCOM staff, their adherence to procedures to ensure the transparency of the vote. And we saw it, we witnessed it, and we should give appreciation to the leadership of GCOM, to the staff of GCOM, and to the thousands of people that they hired and trained to conduct these elections. The police force and the security forces of Guyana were also out there in major numbers, and they kept our country peaceful. They dealt with any attempt or the minor attempts to disrupt the poll in a very professional way. They were subjected to all sorts of provocations and rumors and lies throughout the course of the day, but their professionalism was very evident. And I want to thank them also for keeping our country safe on election day and allowing the voters of this country to freely and openly cast their ballots. And I urge them to continue to be vigilant against those who may want to be disruptive as we wind down the process, which would soon result in President Ali being sworn in for a second term. There would be an appropriate time, I want to say that to our activists, for the appreciation of their work to be properly celebrated. I know many of our supporters across Guyana, they're very excited and they want to celebrate, and they have a right to celebrate, and they must do so in a manner that is not triumphalist, because we're working for all of Guyana. But I don't see any harm in you celebrating the great outcome that your party has achieved. And so this brings me to the continued attempt by some not to want to accept the results of the elections and their infantile antics to delay the inevitable. So I saw the sheriff thing is collapsing all the time. I saw Mr. Aubrey Norton, who might as well now be maybe a former leader of the opposition. Let's see how it goes. But saying things like, instead of addressing seriously what took place in these elections, and I recall the first interview I gave before the statements of poll had even started coming in great numbers. And I said it will be a long, hard night for APNU because we knew what the outcome would have been. The signs were there. They refused to accept what was clear, what was evident to every other Guyanese. But like the proverbial ostrich, they stuck their heads in the sand and refused to deal with this situation. So this is what Mr. Norton had to say. We have seen in Region 4 something very implausible, that we'll drop from 120,000 plus votes to 40-something thousand. It never happened in any elections in the world. Well, that's not true. It happened in many elections in the world. But what were the facts around Region 4? What are the facts around Region 4? So, in 2020, APNU got 116,941 votes in Region 4. The People's Progressive Party got 80,920 votes. There was a difference of 36,021 votes between the two parties. They got 36,021 votes more than the PPP. In these elections, it's true that APNU dropped to 41,607 votes. But Win got 41,607 votes, and APNU dropped to 46,956 votes. It's true, but combined they had 88,563 votes. The PPP, on the other hand, increased its vote to 87,536 votes. We increased our votes by 6,000, which is not implausible in an election in Region 4. And they didn't drop from 116,000 to 40-something thousand. They dropped to 88,000 combined because Win took a significant part of APNU's votes. So this is utter nonsense. And it's a fact that we did not win Region 4. We did not win Region 4 because combined they had about 1,000 votes more than us in Region 4, APNU and Win. And then when you add the small parties, which had about 4,633 votes more. So in Region 4, the combined vote of all the political parties versus the PPP, they had just over 5,000 votes more than us in Region 4. That's the fact. However, it's a significant collapse. Even when you look at the combined votes, they got 23,685 votes less than in the last elections in Region 4. Even when you add APNU, WIN, and all the other parties, they got 26,685 votes. So a lot of those people stayed home or voted PPP in the region. In North Georgetown, we emerge as the largest political party. Now, North Georgetown is made up of Cummins Lodge, Sophia, Kitty, Campbellville, Alberton, Queenstown, Kingston, Central Georgetown. There are 7 constituencies of the 15 in the city that comprise North Georgetown. And we emerge in North Georgetown as the largest political party. When you add APNU and WIN together, they got 3,000 votes more than the PPP. But as a single party, we had the highest number of votes in these areas. We had 13,070 votes, and they had 16,162 votes in North Georgetown. So we emerge as a major player in North Georgetown. In fact, the biggest political party, bigger than WIN and bigger than APNU in North Georgetown. So what Norton was saying, making it seem as though the Region 4 votes were implausible. He never seen this before. It's utter nonsense. Also in Region 10, we moved from complete domination of the region to having lost the region, something we have never seen in this country. Well, we've seen this before in this country. So the PPP moved up in Region 10 from about 13% of the votes in the last elections to just under 20%, about 20% of the votes in these elections in Region 10. And then WIN took their support. WIN took their support. So he said, we're going to challenge these results. So they have requested a recount in Region 4, parts of Region 4, that's ongoing now, and parts of Region 5. They've requested recounts. But that's, as we've seen already, that the numbers are not changing in the recount. That because the process was so diligent, or that you're not going to have major changes. Maybe a couple of votes here or there. One was rejected. One was close to the cup and didn't get counted, but should be counted because the voter's intention is clear. That would change. But you're not going to see maybe a swing of more than maybe a few votes in the recount. That's not going to change the results, but it's to delay the inevitable. And for him to come to the realization that the APNU had a failed political strategy. Failed political strategy. On the other hand, Azruddin Mohammed, so everything was propitious for him. They said this was a 3 months long political party. This was not 3 months. This was several years of working. This was the same man who did an interview with the enabling newspaper Starbuck News and said, people used to call me president from 2020. That I was born to be president of Guyana. who had been going around for a very, very long time before these 3 months, so misleading people, using his charity to try to build a base or an impression that he is generous and he is charitable. And he launched his party at the right time when there were lots of people who did not want to support APNU again, and they did not want to support the PPP. And they voted for him. He was the only other party that was not related to APNU AFC government, the coalition government, outside of the PPP. So he benefited significantly from that. That was one of the reasons for him taking votes from APNU. But by the next 5 years, because the elections are over, 2030, a lot of those people will have different considerations again. So that's one. Two, that there was a young generation of voters that were first-time voters. That's the internet generation that was living online, and they had this heavy online presence made up of lies through the team Mohammed and a positive portrayal of Azruddin Mohammed that influenced a lot of young people, particularly across the country. But I'm going to tell you about the PPP supporters in a moment. So he benefited from that too. The young voters, first-time voters, who were internet related and very impressionable, who would not go and dig into the other side of his character, which is a criminal side of his character. The more solid voters, the APNU voters who voted PPP or who stayed home, they were unwilling to give their support back to APNU, but they were not going to give it to a criminal or a criminal entity. And that's a significant number if you look at the turnout in many APNU strongholds. They were not going to give. Those are the thinking voters who said, we're not going to give it to this criminal. He's bad news for our country. And we're not going to give it to APNU. We prefer to stay home. And then a significant part of that base too voted PPP when you look at the results of the elections. So he benefited from that. And then the money that camp doled out. So I saw him, this delusional gentleman, and you know he's very sad now because people think he's very happy. He's very sad because he was delusional. He said, I'm going to be president because I did a survey of 80,000 people and 65% said they're voting for me. I'll be president. You recall that? He actually said that. He started wearing the crown on his clothing. He imported the crown for his vehicles. You have to really seek medical help if you're in that state of mind. And that's why he would issue a statement like this. Imagine he goes, we have arrived at a critical, they gave him a piece of paper to read, and he read it on the air. We have arrived at a critical point in the history of our nation. Within the past few days, we have had numerous and credible reports of grave irregularities in the conduct of these 2025 elections. Reports of statements of poll going missing. I don't know which statement of poll has gone missing. Not a single observer has said this. Not a single political party has said a statement of poll has gone missing, but he said that. Tampering with ballot boxes. Not a single observer, and there are thousands of them in the country, has said anyone attempted to tamper with a ballot box. He then says the PPP government has been purchasing votes. Imagine this camp talking about purchasing votes. The Mohammed camp talking about vote purchasing. When up to the night of their rally in Georgetown, when the people went to collect their money from Doggy, and Doggy said, I'm still on the live here, because they're saying we don't want Compton cook-up. They don't want Compton's cook-up, and when we're going to collect the money. And he talks about vote purchasing. This is, and then he repeats what Norton said. Numerically and politically, it is impossible for the PPP to have won in Region 4. They're sharing, he and Apnu, he and Norton must be collaborating in talking the same nonsense. I just gave you the figures. In Region 4, the PPP grew by 6,000 votes. It's not implausible to grow by 6,000 votes. And especially since you had about 37,000 new voters on the list in Region 4, APNU and AFC vote combined and collapsed in Region 4 by about 20-something thousand less. So they even had tents set up along the east coast of Demerara. Now, every political party had tents set up to, you've seen it everywhere. There's a standard around the election. This guy is running crazy because, you know, he actually thought in his very limited capability to analyze things that he was going to be president. Only someone who is crazy or delusional would start wearing the crown, the presidential crown, even before the results have come in. And so, although he has made a big dent in APNU's support, he's still not satisfied with it. Because he's saying, outside they're protesting outside, G come now to swear him in as president. You have to be really stupid to be pushing that line now. And that is what we're going to have to deal with. So let me just go back to what was being said before. Let me play something for you. So on nomination day, because we've said this a million times everywhere, on nomination day, when we came out of presenting our list for the 2025 elections, our list of candidates, there were several media houses represented there. And many political parties gave interviews. And I was asked about the Mohammeds and him, and the Mohammed damaging PPP's support, because that was the narrative spread by Stabrook News and many of the Travis Chases and Mosleys and every one of them, that he was going to, one, affect the PPP support and bring us into a minority government. Since then, they started with the minority government. And this is what I had to say. APNU has to worry more about the Mohammeds than the People's Progressive Party. And that's what I said there. APNU had to worry more about the Mohammeds than the People's Progressive Party. It was true. We saw the signs. We knew it. We did our polls. We did our focus groups. We saw where the impact of money and the lies were having the greatest resonance, and we saw it was affecting the APNU support. I'll continue playing this. So I said that
it's harming them, it's backfiring them.
I said the collaboration will harm them.
No, they will not be hung parliament.
Yeah, I was asked by Dennis Chabral, what about a hung parliament? And I said then there will be no hung parliament. Two things we spoke of since nomination day and long before nomination day. We said that the quiet collaboration between APNU and WIN and the AFC and WIN will harm APNU disproportionately. We were right. We saw it coming. They should have seen it coming. They persisted with this fallacy that somehow he would dent the PPP support and cause us to be a minority government. They started pushing the minority government rhetoric early. They then came up with the fake polls. You remember just a couple of weeks ago, they published one in the Kaichor News. Some group of businessmen said they did the poll with UG students that showed that we were going to be a minority government. Then they brought a ton of the PPP haters on GlobeSpan, and they started carrying that rhetoric. The Nigel Hughes and the others weighed in. All of the trolls on the APNU side weighed in. The Starbuck News was the chief cheerleader of this, elevating the Mohammeds all the time, ignoring all of his criminality, pushing him because they were hoping that he will damage the PPP support and that we will become a minority government. Well, you've seen the results. Landslide. We're now over 10 percentage point difference between the opposition and us, and in 2020 it was less than 1%. And we're now going into the parliament with a stronger parliamentary majority. With a stronger parliamentary majority. And so we recognize all of this. Before, we knew that they were going to collaborate. The media in Guyana, there are elements of the media, and that's why when the EU talks about independent media, I hope they don't mention Starbuck News or Melly Mel, like, because they were meeting with them all the time, and these extremists. And I saw in the EU thing that government officials were harassing the independent media. I don't know where that came from. They mentioned that in the EU report. It was all a fallacy. They were all working. There were many people in the media who were working for the Mohammeds, collecting money from them. Some reporters too. Reporters were working. And guess who? They thought they were harming the PPP, because many of them are PPP haters. They were working there. Look what they did. It's APNU. APNU suffered the consequences. We're back in government with a bigger majority, than before. And by 2030, it will be even bigger. By 2030, it will be even bigger. And so it would be interesting to look at the so-called reporters now in the independent media, how they covered up all of the criminalities of the Mohammeds. All of their criminality. They allowed mediocrity to pass off as politics or erudition. They allowed what people should be. No candidate in the world would have had, with this sort of baggage, should have even been, or at least should have been interrogated by the media. They gave him a free pass, thinking that they were harming the PPP. That is the only thing that united all of them, the haters. Even now, every media, every international media outfit has said several things. The EU, even though they spoke about resources, they say this everywhere, the state might be abusing resources. They had the following things to say. For example, Dennis Chabral asked about voters impersonation. And this is what they said. Vanya, who is the deputy, Angulova, said, during our observation, we haven't seen any or heard about cases of impersonation of voters during the voting process. Clear. No voters impersonation. 2, Dennis Chabral asked, what about multiple voting? No multiple voting. The Carter Center made it clear. No evidence of a padded voters list. But we should remove the dead people on the list, they said, through a process, which we have always supported. No evidence of a padded voters list. Everyone concluded, including the EU, that overall, the 2025 general and regional elections in Guyana were peaceful, inclusive, and efficiently organized, offering citizens meaningful choices. That was the conclusion from the EU report. This is what observer groups have to do. They come here to see if the elections were free and fair. They all concluded elections were free and fair. And guess what? The still enabling group, the enabling class who enabled Mohammed, complicit with him, are back at it again. So, if you look at the statement by the GHRA signed on to by APA and the TUC and everyone, they now said that, that the Bangladeshis were here in large numbers and no observer group must do their report without speaking about these Bangladeshis. They're trying to get in an observer group report that foreigners voted in our elections. The people just dismiss them because they see through who these people are. They now come out, oh, the Bangladeshis voted here. Some bullshit they talk about all the time. These useless people from the GHRA and the Red Threads and the APA and TUC again. The same group that they were praying for the PPP to be a minority government. And they get enabled by the Starbuck News. Now they put out a report. And no observer report will be complete without this in it. They're telling what the observers must say. And when asked about it, Jason Carter made it clear. Since 1966 Constitution, Commonwealth citizens can vote in Guyana. Since the 1966 Constitution, that never got changed. Since 1966 it was there. In the 1980 Constitution it was there, and with all the constitutional changes. And how come they don't complain about anyone else, Trinidadians who are here, who also can vote after a year in Guyana, because that's part of our constitution, or Jamaicans, or anyone else, or Nigerians who voted in large numbers in the last elections, who are here as Commonwealth citizens, or Ghanaians? How come it's only Bangladeshi? It's racist also, making it look, oh, they voted for PPP. What if Mohammed paid them to vote? So it's pure nonsense. This is what they will come up with, these sour, hostile people who enabled the Mohammeds. It was a collective effort. This was not a 3-month-long political party. Started a long time ago to save him from accountability. Well, no parliamentarian has immunity, and that is what I think he's worried about. President has immunity. That's why he wants to be sworn in now as president. He's protesting out there to be sworn in as president. He was wearing the crown. He imported the crown to put on his vehicle. He's hoping for immunity. No parliamentarian has immunity from fraud and electoral, and not electoral, but criminal behavior. So that doesn't give him what he wanted. This is it. And APNU just needs to really start. Norton, this is the guy who says he taught political science at the university. He was teaching political science and he didn't understand the first basic thing is to make sure that you don't enable someone to cannibalize your support through a series of lies. All of the APNU trolls who were cussing the PPP, APNU got them to support the Mohammeds because they were thinking that they were supporting a movement to bring us with a reduced majority in parliament into a minority government. So those were the people who had access to your base, the same trolls and the influencers who were supporting the Mohammeds, some of them were paid by the Mohammeds, and then others were, APNU and AFC said, please support him because he's going to help the PPP, bring down the PPP. Well, you have the results here today. You'd have many sleepless nights to take Burnham's party and reduce it to what it is today. The APNU. This is what Norton has done with his leadership. And he keeps saying, he's collaborating with them now in the opposition. I saw a couple of days he's having discussion with the other parties in the opposition. I don't know what discussion about. You just need to focus on getting back your supporters. And you need a long hours and days of introspection. We warned them publicly. We did. You heard it. You heard it for yourself. I played it for you. We said it over and over. I said it many times here because we saw what was happening. Anybody with a modicum of sense would have seen this happening. We said to many of them, you'll be replaced as opposition. We said that to the APNU people. Oh, they said, oh, you're all afraid. You're afraid. Well, here are the results. We've been watching this carefully. So, as I said before, thank you to everyone who supported the PPP. We will continue to work for all of Ghana. The PPP won these elections with a landslide. Don't listen to these naysayers. All of them are trying to diminish the PPP's victory. Oh, we want a recount here. Somebody didn't smile at me nicely in the polling place. Somebody took away my crown from my suit or something like that I was wearing there. You're going to hear all sorts of stupid things like we heard before. But the results are clear, and this time the SOPs are in the hands of every Guyanese. You all have, every Guyanese. We don't have to get a torchlight to look for the SOPs any longer. We don't have to do that anymore in this country. Every single Guyanese now has access to those SOPs that are signed on to by all the political parties that witness the count in every polling place in this country. So that's how transparent this system is. So they're going to try to diminish our victory. Fact of the matter is the PPP has won these elections with a landslide and has gone now into Parliament with an increased majority. President Irfanali will be the president for the next 5 years. Thank you. Yes, please.
And Kiana Wilberg, I have a few questions for you. Given the PPP's success in the Region 4 district, what aspect of your political strategy do you think resonated well with the 7,000 extra voters that you secured to gain the edge in this particular district?
So let me tell you, in many parts of the country, there are many Afro-Ghanese who came out and supported the PPP, as you can see from the results. In New Amsterdam, we emerged as the largest political party. In New Amsterdam, we got, as a single party, more votes than APNU, and we got more votes than WIN, as a single political party. In many areas in Region 5, we emerged with a greater margin in Region 5 than we had in 2020. Many Afro-Ghanese there voted for the PPP too. And we had, as you are aware by now, I spoke of it, it's no secret. I want to thank these people too, I forgot about them, the hundreds of people who were manning in Freedom House the telephone lines and who worked in Freedom House here throughout the period. I want to thank them. And there was another group of very dedicated Guyanese who made 80,000 calls to people. And they talked to them. And a lot of those people said, we're going to be supportive of the PPP in many areas that are traditionally not being sympathetic to us. The numbers were unbelievably good. And I realize now what a lot of those people meant. A lot of them just decided their support to us meant they were not going to support APNU. They just stayed home. So some came out and actually did support, and others stayed home. I think this happened in South Georgetown, where we made lots of calls to people's homes. A lot of people said, yeah, we support it, we like what you're doing and stuff like that, but they did not come out to vote for us, but they did not give APNU or win their support. That's the group of Guyanese who you don't see them, and there are many Afro-Guyanese in that group too, and others came out. The Indo-Guyanese support was very, very strong, very, very strong, and in the Amerindian communities too, contrary to this belief that we're going to lose large numbers of Amerindian votes, we, in Region 1, we still won the region in a major way, but close to 60% of the votes. Our margin fell there a little bit. In Region 9, we increased our votes significantly from about 57% to 64, 65% in Region 9. That was a huge, we won about nearly 10,000 of the 15,000 votes there. That in Region 8, we increased from about 43% of the votes to about 49.8% of the votes, nearly 50% of the votes. So we increased in Region 8 too. In Region 7, we just around the same. We had 38% of the votes. We have around the same, about 35 to 38 when the numbers are in. So contrary to the public belief that they were going to damage us in these regions. Didn't happen. Did not happen. Because we were working the ground too. And there was this belief that they were, making, in Region 10, I told you already, our support went up from 13% to 20%. In Region 4, it went up. In Region 5, it went up. So these were very, very favorable results for the People's Progressive Party. And we managed even Region 6. In spite of the high rate of migration in Region 6, we managed to get around the 41,000 votes back that we got in the last elections. And you had a high rate of migration out of Region 6 in the first few years, mainly in PPP support areas. We found a lot of the homes were empty, etc. So overall, was good. I lost track. I haven't slept for days, so I lost track of your question again.
No problem. I was asking you what aspect of your political strategy do you think really resonated with the voter?
Because we carried a positive message, bringing our people together. We're the only party that was not engaged in divisive rhetoric. APNU was engaged totally in that, immersed in that. Win was playing the victim, doling out money, preying on young people. Young people, that was all they were doing. They didn't outline a clear strategy. People liked the fact that we outlined a plan to work for all Guyana, that we had a clear, defined, sustainable plan. They like the fact that we had capable leadership. They know from tomorrow or from today, we're working back that they can trust capable leadership. You don't have to take chances with a person who can't read a slip of paper, and much less, and that's a sad thing in our parliament, but it will be fun, but it's sad in the parliament to watch some of the flotsams that will float in there. But it would be an interesting parliament. I think I'm going to go more often. So people like that. People like that about us, and they also like the fact that we are a party that delivers on its promises. And that, I attribute the electoral success to that. And then good ground organization. A political party runs on how well it, not just campaigns, but its ground logistics, how well it can put that together. And we had, as I said before, thousands of ordinary people contributing to the campaign, from making calls, taking calls, preparing the documents, preparing food, walking around, sharing the flyers, all of that sort of thing. We were a cohesive, happy unit. People saw that in our faces when we campaigned. We're not sour like some of the other parties.
Second question. One of the things that I believe has surprised many citizens, observers, it has to do with the extent to which the APNU, the PNC-led APNU, was hammered in the elections. Some people expected that it would have returned as the main opposition at the very least, but the extent to which they've been battered has been eye-opening. I want to hear from you if you believe that this is perhaps the PNC's worst performance in its history, one. Two, do you think that they can make a comeback from this, maybe by 2030? And thirdly, based on the electorate's response to AFC, they wouldn't have any presence in Parliament anymore. Your thoughts on their perceived fall from grace?
The AFC, we said it before, they they lost their way a long time back. And I don't want today to be too harsh on them. And the PNC now has to go back to the drawing table, and they have to decide whether they would, their hatred of the PPP caused them to stop thinking. When a political party allows your hatred of the other to dominate your tactics and your strategy, political strategy, you will fail. You have to look at things dispassionately in politics. And they put all their eggs in one basket, the collaboration with Mohammed's basket, to bring down the PPP because of their hatred for the PPP. And that led to their undoing. And so when they think about rebuilding, they have to think about how they tackle that variable and how they're going to relate now to that political party. Not so much the PPP. They can continue hating us. They will continue hating us. But there was room for always for collaboration on national issues with APNU historically, because we tended to have a more patriotic position. We always saw the territorial integrity and sovereignty of our country as inviolable. And I think we had a common understanding on that. I'm not so sure about the Win Party. They're transactional. The link with Maduro is still not fully explored. They refuse to answer why the father went into the embassy up to now, and they got away with it. So APNU has to do its own homework. I'm not going to tell them what to do. They need to know what to do themselves. And what we knew they were going to become the third force in parliament. We said this to many of their leaders. Because, in the banter and everything else, and actually, we have records of people texting them saying, you will be. And so we saw it coming. We saw it coming, what took place. There was no surprise on election night, because even before, as I said, beginning, the statements of poll had not come in as yet in large numbers, and I said, tonight will be a tough night for APNU. And it was a tough night for them. So we saw this happening entirely. It didn't catch us by surprise. They now, in a way I feel sorry for them, but if their hatred of the PPP clouded good sense.
I know you've said on the campaign trail, Mr. Norton is a friend of yours.
No,
sarcastically, I'm aware, but...
he spent more time. In politics you have banter. You always have banter. So how many times I said, Norton, my dear friend and stuff. It's political banter. He spent more of his time talking about that he's not Jagdeo's friend, and focusing on securing his base. So
So, my question, I know you've said, two final questions for me. I know you've said on the campaign trail sarcastically that Mr. Norton is your friend, but within the political landscape, when you observe the results, the trashing, if you want to call it that, do you feel sympathetic at all for
I just said it's a sad day for the PNC. It's a very sad day for the PNC. And I'm sure that the people who came to the PPP must now be saying, thank God, all of the people who were vilified. Because they're now with a party that has won an increased majority in the parliament and that will be in office for the next 5 years, and a party that is bringing Guyana together, that will work for all Guyanese.
Has the PPP wrapped his mind yet around now engaging the Win Party as the main opposition force on national issues? And how do you perceive that changing the dynamics of the parliamentary discourse? That's one. Two, and now you have a main opposition sitting at the helm is a U.S. sanctioned businessman who's facing several charges. Is the party concerned about what that will do to the parliamentary landscape? Do you see any implications?
So one thing is clear, is that Parliament will be very interesting. And we are a seasoned political party. We will address when the Parliament is put together and we see the configuration of the Parliament, we will decide on our strategy at that time. Right now, President Ali has to be sworn in, and Parliament will be convened sometime in the future, and we'll address that matter at that time. But the point that I made before still stands, that if any individual feels that a parliamentary position will cause them to avoid accountability for criminal acts, then that parliamentarian is suffering from a severe case of delusion. First of all, our parliament doesn't offer, as I said before, immunity to parliamentarians from criminal acts. And two, that a lot of what had to be put on hold because of the campaign, evidence of criminality because of the campaign and the feeling that if you pursue individuals for their criminal acts who are running for office, it would be seen as victimization by the state or the ruling party. That no longer applies. The elections are over. And so, the evidence of criminal behavior will now have to be presented to the right fora, which are our courts and everything else, where they and our tax authorities, so that they can continue to do their work professionally and diligently, and without fear of any criticism that they are treating people preferentially. So I'm sure Azruddin Mohammed wouldn't want preferential treatment from the police, because as opposition leader you have to have, if he decides he wants to go for that, you have to have equality before the law. I remember as opposition leader, and I'm not saying he will be, but if he decides that, that's their decision to make. Soku came to my office. You remember they arrested Roger Luncheon? Doesn't mean that you remember in my office, I had to go to Soku as opposition leader to face some frivolous thing that APNU had come up with. They didn't even add anything to ask me much when I went in there. So I'm hoping he's not looking for preferential treatment, because nobody should have preferential treatment before the law. So, but those are early days. These are early days, as yet. These are early days. There will be, in the future, many, many things that we'd have to get back to.
Dr. Jagdeo, Mikhail Rodriguez for Daybreak News. So far, requests have been made by opposition parties for recounts in 2 to 3 regions, covering about 391 boxes. That started this morning at about 7:30. So far, only 64 boxes have been, 66 boxes have been completed, and some 25 being looked at presently. Are you satisfied with the process presently? And at that rate, what time do you think the completion of the recount can be? And at what time can Guyanese expect the much needed swearing in of, and much expected swearing in of Mohamed Irfan Ali, after which the celebrations will commence?
Well, I think by now, every Guyanese knows the results of the elections. They know that the request by APNU to recount the ballot boxes in region, on the East Coast and parts of Region 5, is just another attempt to delay the inevitable. This process, I anticipate, will be completed in maybe a day or 2. They'll work through the night at that pace that they're going. They started this morning. They're completed like 60 something already, and by maybe tomorrow evening or so, they should be completed, the process. And then thereafter, all it takes is to declare the results. The results are already known to every person. They all have the declarations by each RO for all the regions. So I think by now Guyanese are aware that you just have to allow the process to be completed. They requested, when people request a recount, they have to do it by a certain time. The right person has to do it. And it is almost, if they do it by a certain time and the right person does it, it's automatic. You have to give the recount. That's part of our electoral process. You can't hurry this up. You can't stop people from getting a recount once they comply with the law. And the law says by noon of the following day after the declaration, you have a right to request a recount. And you have to do it, a particular individual has to do it, though, the counting agent of a political party. So once you comply with that, you get the recount. It's part of our process. We're not going to attempt to rush anything through there. They should do it diligently, the recount, because we don't believe it will change the results one bit. And after that, the declaration would be made and President Ali would be sworn in.
You, Guyanese, yourself, have been through this 5 months in 2020. With the most, to date, the most transparent elections in the history of Guyana, we are recounting. Do you foresee any other impediment being created after this recount?
the thing is that, okay, after the recount, they can decide they want to go to the court, but I don't see that as a viable option for them to. It's not like 2020 when we had the injunction to stop Mingo from declaring the results, because the process is being followed now. We got that injunction because Mingo was not following the law. The law said that you had to use the SOPs as the basis on which to do the tabulation. He was using a spreadsheet. In these elections, the SOPs are known to every Guyanese. They were used to do the tabulation and the final declaration at the regional level. So the law has been followed fully. The law as it relates to recount is being followed fully. So when you go to the court, what are you going to say? I heard somebody told me that, what did Mohammed said? A statement of poll went missing. He said that in his speech that he was reading off the teleprompter that they gave him. You know, reports of statements of polls going missing. You can't carry the rumor to the judge. The judge would put, anyhow, I don't want to say what. It'll just send you packing. You can't say, oh, they're tampering with ballot boxes. That's what he said. You think you can go seriously before a judge and say that now, especially given what every Guyanese has known? You're going to be able to say that sort of thing. Oh, there were some tents outside polling places around the country. Now, everybody in the history of Guyana have always seen these tents. Political parties put up their tents 200 yards away to make sure that they can tick off who goes in to vote, so then they can, in their area, they can run down the others, try to get them out to vote, etc. It's a normal thing in our election. They had tents. I saw many of their tents, the blue tents around the place. And he goes to complain now about these tents. You think you can say that? Or like what Norton said, it's implausible. It's implausible that we could lose so many votes. You can say that to a judge. The judge would say, why don't go and talk to your supporters? What kind of... So they can attempt anything. They just can attempt. They're trying to mar the results of one of the cleanest elections we've had, where the PPP has won a landslide. They're trying to mar it, and they have their enablers. Oh, Bangladeshis voted, so the Starbuck News and the others, the AP and the usual haters, PPP haters, would roll out with that. And then they're coming up with statements of poll going missing. It's all a game now. They recognize that their plan did not work. The plan did not work to bring the PPP below 50% in the parliament. That was the collective plan of APNU, WIN, AFC, and many media houses and reporters and influencers and enablers all together. They're working for one objective. They failed. They failed miserably to do that.
Jagdeo, there has never been, again in the history of Guyana, a politician such as Azadine Mohammed entering into parliament. And let me give you a breakdown of this. No matter what has happened as it relates to politicians who entered into parliament, there were unrest in this country, there were prison breaks in this country, there were murders of politicians in this country, and yet there was never a day in this history of this country in politics that politicians have been accused of being murderers, has ever been sanctioned. Given who Azadine Mohammed is, are you worried as it relates to his ability to create unrest, his criminal background. Since politicians have done so much more worse. Now this is a certifiable criminal, person accused of killing people. Are you worried?
I'm not worried. As I said before, we've had to deal with situations that were very different and much more volatile and much more dangerous for our country. And we're not going to allow anyone to disrupt the lives of our people. You have tens of thousands of people out there, in fact, hundreds of thousands of people who have to go out now every day to earn a living. They need a peaceful Guyana to have that happen. Need to take their children to school. They want a peaceful Guyana. They want to make sure that they can go out and enjoy leisure activity peacefully, safely, and we're taking that responsibility as a government seriously. Everybody wants free and fair elections. They want the rules of the game to be clear. The rules of the game were clear. People had a fair chance to contest. The results are known. Whether they supported the PPP or APNU or wherever else, they want to continue their lives. The people have spoken. The electorate has spoken. Now, another 5 years, they will get a chance to speak again, the electorate. Our citizens want to continue with their lives. Azruddin Mohammed will not be allowed to disrupt the lives of our people if he has such an intention. If he has such an intention.
Joe Bryan, NCN News. Now that the PPP has claimed a historic victory in Region 4, what can persons in this region expect in terms of development at the local level?
I didn't claim a historic victory.
No, the PPP.
Oh, no, we have not claimed. I just gave you the numbers. I just gave you the numbers here. We did not.
Now that the PPP has won a historic
some
victory.
individuals in the PPP may have made posts, etc. You have to be careful. Like many times I said, when Amir was speaking about the PPP, people said, oh, the PPP telling him to say this. People speak as individuals. When you heard me as General Secretary of the party speak about Region 4 and the results, I speak for the party. There are lots of individuals who may make posts. They're excited about the narrowness, how we have done well in Region 4. We've done extraordinarily well. But that's a different matter than claiming victory in Region 4. I said, even when I was, I spoke first about the trend in Region 4, I always left room for that possibility because I was saying we were close to APNU and WIN combined, but you still had the small parties that made a difference. When you add their votes, then you can claim victory. It means you're the biggest party in Region 4. If that's what you meant, the biggest, but okay, I can understand what you mean. By far, we are the biggest political party in Region 4. We got 80-something thousand votes. APNU got 46,000 votes, I think, and WIN got 41,000 votes. So by far, we're the biggest political party in Region 4. By far. You know, so yes. So now I answer your question on that. What the people of Region 4 can expect because we're the biggest political party. Well, we're the biggest political party in the country too. Right? So all the people of Guyana can expect the continuation of us working in their benefit for their children, for them and their families. They can expect that from us. The hard work to bring our country together, to make sure that more people have jobs, better paying jobs, they have help with the children. All of our promises still hold. through with the housing, getting them better housing, a lot of those things, lower taxation, that we mentioned on the campaign trail. We intend to fulfill our promises for all the people of Ghana.
Some of the administration's priorities after swearing in, immediate
getting
priorities.
back to work. You see, they changed at the backdrop. I had the backdrop, all those promises that we made. But yes, those are the things. See our manifesto. Those are our priorities to get them going. Everything we have to start planning. For example, we promised a development bank. So we have to start from scratch now to now put together this development bank. We have to put the money in the bank. We'd said about 200 million US dollars. You'd have to raise the money, put it in the bank. We then have to establish the procedures to access the zero interest rate loans for small business. So that requires work. You have to start from tomorrow to start getting that work done. Similarly, there are many other things. The Berbice Bridge, we said we will get that done too. We have to now go through. I think the bids had already come in. We put a hold on any award of the bids. I don't know if they're still valid or do we have to update the validity of the bids. But then that project has to be awarded. That's something we promised. We promised to start looking at concrete drains in people's communities. We have to start thinking about how we get this done. You're going to have a lot of disruption maybe, because when you're working in the communities, if you have to break a person's bridge to now go, you have to fix it back. Because if you want a continuous concrete drain, and the bridges, some people solid cast their bridge. So you have a gutter here and then the water can't flow. A lot of those small things that may sound small, but that's what governments do, get to work. And we've been at it a lot. There's no time to rest. A lot of people have been trying to see us before the elections. I have to see them like a long list next week. That kind of thing. We're not gonna stop working. That is what it requires for government. And so many other things. We only receive 4,000 of the 96,000 the 100,000 lights we purchased. That means 96,000 street lights will be received shortly before the end of the year or early next year, and we have to start implementing them. That's what I mean by getting back to work immediately, because people want their street lights. How do we get the 4,000 cameras up and in place within the next 2-3 years in all the communities, etc., for greater security? These are important things.
Circling back to the observers, one of their preliminary recommendations had been setting up independent fact-checking mechanism to combat disinformation and so on. What are your thoughts on this, and what are your thoughts about the impact disinformation in general may have played on the elections?
Yeah, but a lot of those, so I don't know which group said that, but if you go in any part of the world, in the United States of America, it's the most robust, one of the most robust democracies around the world, and you had a ton of fake news. You listen to President Trump, fake news. He talks about fake news all the time. They could have, which organization they have in the US, the government set up to fact check fake news? None. The media houses themselves should be fact-checking fake news. So sometimes CNN and the others do that. But then here the media houses themselves are the source of fake news a lot of times. The media houses. If you look at a Travis Chase post, he gets sued. And when you sue them, they then complain, oh, it's harassing journalists. So you tell me in the US which government agency they have to fact check fake news. As in the EU, they may have an agency who pays attention to them. You think in the EU they don't have fake news? Every day their campaigns are run on the basis of fake news. They reverse the outcome of elections in, I think it was Romania, on the basis of the claim that fake news. And then the US had to complain about it. Now fake news, that Russian disinformation. And look at the outcome. They're now cited around the world for EU interference in elections. Look at Vance, the Vice President Vance's speech that he made just after they took office to the European Union. So you come into these countries and recommending things that don't work anywhere else in the world. It's just, for me, it's not, I just see them in the reports and they mean very little to me. The key thing is the free and fair elections. That's what observers are supposed to come here and do. And I've been on record already as saying, I would urge President Ali more to open schools and hospitals right up to election day that they don't like, because that's what you campaign on. I wish APNU did that in the 5 years they were there. That President Granger, instead of doing, going around and talking a lot of nonsense, were busy opening up hospitals and schools up to the last day before the 2020 elections. You know what they were trying to do? They were trying to steal the elections. They were trying to avoid going to elections. They were trying to create a constitutional crisis with the CCJ. They were spending $419.5 billion without parliamentary approval. They were using their funds from the Ministry of Natural Resources to buy green shirts and put up billboards for APNU in that period. We didn't do those things. So we're not going to be defensive on those matters. We made it clear. The observers came here, they found there were key findings. No credibility to their electoral role being padded. 2, no credibility to foreigners voting in our last elections. Everyone who voted was eligible to vote. The Bangladeshis who may have voted, I don't even know who they are, they may have voted, but they're Commonwealth citizens, as they have a right to vote as in our Constitution. They found that the elections were free, fair, efficiently managed. Those are the key findings for any electoral mission and observation mission. So that's how I see it.
Good afternoon, Trina Williams, Guyana Chronicle. You talked earlier about the allegations of financial inducements. Mr. Norton, earlier this week, when he talked about the trashing that APNU received in one of its stronghold, Linden, said that the voters were also swayed by money. I had also raised
Did he say that? Well, then why he doesn't say it publicly? He said it publicly, the voters were swayed in Linden by money. Well, I'm happy he said it. So they should ask him, who paid the money? Because it couldn't be People's Progressive Party. Because our votes grew from 13% to 19-20%. So
he was talking about the PPP when he made that statement.
But he needs to say it clearly. Why does he say Azruddin Mohammed or the team Mohammed paid people in Linden to vote for them? He needs to come out openly. This is the issue, that they're unwilling to criticize him forcefully with all the wrongdoings and the criminal behavior, because it's either one of two things, that he was funding these political parties to illicit money, or 2, they don't have I was going to say something else, but they don't have that to call him out.
Yeah, I'll continue with my question. I had also raised this with you on election day that there were reports of WIN activists offering voters money. Based on this, do you see this as a broader issue that requires stricter oversight in future elections?
Yeah, I think so. But as was pointed out, when you have a guy who is accused of murder, smuggling cocaine, smuggling gold, false declaration, torture of people, all of that, I don't think buying votes is a major, that's a major issue when you see these big transgressions. It is a problem, and I think we should deal with it. But if you can smuggle gold with all the attendant risks and do these other things that I don't think that buying votes he'd be deterred from doing that. It's well-oiled criminal mindset.
My substantive question, during the campaign, your party placed strong emphasis on appealing to young voters, especially first-time voters. Now that the election has concluded, as General Secretary, do you believe your campaign succeeded in genuinely connecting with this demographic and translating that support into votes?
So the key thing, we recognize that the outsized media influence, online media influence on the young voters could have caused problems among young voters in PPP strongholds. We recognize that. And so we focus heavily on those young voters too, to give them an alternate viewpoint, because they were captured, a lot of young voters in the Apnu base and other places, captured by this constant online presence from the Team Mohammed, a deadly cocktail of lies and claims of persecution. And then they had it was so prolific because the Apnu people were propagating it too, that you had to give people, young voters, a different view. And they got it based on our interactions on the ground. And when they came to our rally, we mobilized them to come out heavily to the rallies. And they got, for first time, or the public meetings, they heard a different side of the story. And the moment they heard that different side, they saw this Team Mohammed in its true form, what it was all about. And so, if you look at our crowds, we made a serious effort to get the young voters out, and they came out in the crowd. Large numbers of them were there, and they listened, and that's why at some point in time, if you look at the people who were commenting on the WIN page, the PPP voters just moved away because they saw the true nature of this person. Apnu didn't do that.
How does your party plan to continue engaging young people, especially in the faces, what you just mentioned, these social media optics and lies?
So you have to use social media, but we're trying to get the young person to focus on their own lives and to develop an awareness of this situation where they would be bombarded by a ton of information, and they have to navigate choices. And you do that by education, more education. So we made it clear, unlimited number of scholarships. We made it clear we want to give people more skills. So if you educate the young voter if you get them caught up in a virtuous cycle now of education, good paying job, getting a house lot, building a home, starting a family, buying a vehicle, recreation in their communities, good citizen through the civic education. That is, they would have getting the churches and the temples and the mosques to work with them, creating a new value system. Then our young people could have productive lives. That's the virtuous circle that we're trying to create and suck people into. APNU is not doing that. They're trying to take you into a vicious circle of racism and, oh, you're victims. And when they're saying basically, be short term, collect 100,000 or 50,000, collect a slasher, and then vote for me. Nothing beyond that. There's, how many people they paid in a lot of the Amerindian communities elsewhere? They gave them large sums of money to influence others, just handed money to them. Up to 2 days ago, a man said to me, one of the guys collected $5 million to them for his community. I don't know if he paid out all, but he went around giving money to people like $10,000 each and stuff. And those people will have the most to lose, because after the 10,000 goes, just assuming he had won. He didn't win, so, but just assume they would have had the most to lose. So thank you very much. Thank you for being here.